Hello, welcome to the Soul Traveler podcast. I'm your host, Gunleen, a life coach, rapid transformational therapist, ancestral healer, psychic medium, intuitive channel, and writer. In this podcast, I share the lessons and wisdom I've gleaned from my personal journey of healing, self-discovery, and spirituality. Hi, welcome back. This episode is about ancestral trauma. This can be a very sensitive topic, so as you're listening, if any part makes you feel uncomfortable, then please be very gentle with yourself and pause the audio. You can come back and resume it later when you feel ready. Ancestral trauma is so internalized in our subconscious because of how it gets accumulated and passed down through the generations that we often react when it gets triggered inside of us, but we don't even know that we're reacting. So I encourage you to tread this topic with loads of self-compassion. As you bring some of the traumatized parts of yourself into conscious awareness, remember to not judge them, but to have reverence and compassion for the ways in which they adapted to protect you and your ancestors. We're often carrying ancestral burdens that don't belong to us, and they actually didn't start with us. As children, we come into this world innocent as a blank slate, and then our minds start getting colored by the stories and comments that our parents, other family members, teachers, peers share, as well as the dynamics that we see depicted on television. Around the age of 8 is when our generational imprints start becoming really activated and enacted by us. These generational imprints are the inherited patterns that get passed through nature and nurture, through DNA and observation, and we start living them, not quite understanding why they exist in the first place. These can include things like white supremacy beliefs, shame around our own cultural identity, judgments and hatred projected toward other cultures and groups of people, inclination toward a westernized way of being, talking, and dressing. All of this is the result of collective unconscious trauma. There are many cultures that were historically oppressed by white people that still idolize Western values today. This is evident in TV and magazine ads that portray Western fashion, celebrities promoting skin lightening formulas, and an increased move toward keeping up with Western trends at the expense of honoring and celebrating Native traditions. Many of the powers that invaded ancient cultures intended to eradicate the wisdom contained within ancient ancestral practices. These invaders left many of these cultures bereft of their inherent identity and wealth, essentially compelling them to have to emigrate to Western lands where they are still working for the oppressor today, just under a different guise. The aim of the oppressor was to create shame around identity. And they did a fantastic job with that because we still see the echoes of these trauma-driven patterns in modern-day America. So the following is how ancestral trauma shows up today. Firstly is shame. This is hiding who you are, not feeling good enough. This can often show up as a pit in your stomach, which is the energy center of your power, identity, and confidence. This can also show up as shaming or mocking your own people. In other words, putting down cultural practices or behaviors or members of your own group. The second way ancestral trauma shows up is idolizing the oppressor. This entails unconsciously putting the oppressive group up on a pedestal and recreating the historical power imbalance between you and them. In everyday situations, this could mean discounting yourself and your credentials when faced by someone who resembles the oppressor archetype for you. It could also show up as silencing yourself or fawning, meaning going out of your way to appear agreeable to members of the oppressor group. This is ancestral trauma at its finest. Historically, they silenced your ancestors to keep them under their control, and you carry that imprint with you in your cells. So you become mum when faced with those who carry oppressive ancestral energies, especially if you're energetically sensitive and you can pick up on these things. And so if you notice yourself not acting like your usual self and getting noticeably anxious around certain types of people, it may be because of the way that your ancestral energies are interacting with their ancestral energies. It's a very real thing. We carry our ancestors inside of us wherever we go. And believe you me, I did not used to believe this until I started noticing repeating patterns of how other people responded to me and how I felt in certain types of situations that made it very clear that there was something deeper, ancestral in nature that was going on. So the third way that ancestral trauma shows up is anger and hatred toward other groups of people. This can be very unconscious, as all ancestral trauma is, but historically, if there were fights and arguments between different groups of people, there are survival beliefs and behaviors that get internalized and passed on as a means of self-preservation. So if you've noticed older generations of family members having prejudices towards certain cultures, this is indicative of generational trauma. As judgmental and unfair as they may sound, there is a historical reason for why they don't like those people, and there's some healing that's needed with the wounds that were created generations ago. Similarly, prejudice can also show up in mocking and shaming behavior toward other groups of people. This is often internalized shame projected outward. It can also be false ideas of superiority projected outwards. The fourth way ancestral trauma shows up is pride and arrogance in one's own culture. This is the other end of the shame spectrum, and it can often be a defense mechanism to cover up internalized shame. It can also just be a sign of claiming one's ancestral roots, but taking it a bit too far as an unconscious way of balancing the historical suppression of ancestry that once took place. The final two ways that ancestral trauma shows up is through freezing and fleeing. Freezing can occur when someone brings up a sensitive topic about culture, race, and identity, or when you're around people or groups of people who resemble the oppressor that still lives in your ancestral DNA today as fear, and you freeze. Your heart starts beating really fast. You may go weak in your legs. Your nervous system kicks into sympathetic mode. It's rushing blood to your vital organs. Your body is heating up and you cannot open your mouth. You don't know what to say. Your brain and body are frozen and you don't know why. This is because a trauma imprint that belongs to your ancestors is getting energetically reactivated in that moment, in that environment, and your body does not feel safe. It is going into victim mode because deep in your cellular memory, you know what's coming. You're anticipating judgment, you're anticipating criticism, being put down, being made to look or feel bad about yourself. Even though the circumstance you are in may not outwardly appear threatening to anyone else, it feels threatening to you because of the ancestral trauma that you carry. In that moment, your ancestors are literally freezing inside your cells with you because your nervous system is connected to theirs. And a similar energy in their time would have meant harassment, chastising, or worse, abuse. Similar to this, your nervous system could also get you to flee in that moment by making you change the topic, distract yourself and others, or make an excuse to leave. Now, in some cases, leaving is absolutely the healthy response when confronted with an aggressive, harmful, disrespectful, or unhelpful situation. But if you're leaving from a victimized place rather than an empowered one, then this is indicative of ancestral trauma. So those were some of the most common ways in which ancestral trauma shows up. And remember to be very gentle with yourself. None of this information is meant for you to take and judge yourself on. The energies that you're dealing with come from way beyond you, and you sincerely deserve loads of compassion for the mere fact that you've been carrying them for so long. Awareness is always the first step to any healing. If you want to dive deeper into understanding where these ancestral burdens come from specifically for you, given your ancestry, and actually work to clear them for yourself and your ancestors, then you are welcome to book a complimentary 30-minute discovery call linked in the show notes, where you will walk away with a better understanding of what you've been carrying, and we will chart a customized path forward for your ancestral healing journey. And if you're listening to this in 2025, I am still offering the Reconnect to Your Heart container, where we work with your inner child in a safe space to heal personal, familial, and ancestral traumas. It is open at half price through July 7th. There's a ton that we can accomplish in just 2 sessions. That is also linked below should you be interested. Wishing you all the very best, and I'll talk to you soon. You've been listening to the Soul Traveler podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for additional resources and offerings. Signing off for now, this is Gunleen.